Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's FOSS News, your weekly roundup of everything happening in the free and open source software world. We have got a packed show for you today. DeepSeek is throwing down the gauntlet with a colossal new open source AI model. ComfyUI just landed a massive funding round. The Dutch government is ditching GitHub for a sovereign alternative. A controversial tool is shaking up open source licensing. And MinIO is continuing its messy breakup with the open source community. Let's get into it. Kicking things off with a major move in the AI space. According to Open Source for You, DeepSeek has officially launched its V4-Pro model, and it is one of the biggest open source AI models ever released. We are talking about a staggering 1.6 trillion parameters. That is not a typo, folks, placing it firmly among the largest open source language models in existence right now. But here is what makes this launch really interesting beyond the sheer scale. DeepSeek has directly tied V4-Pro to Huawei hardware, which is a significant strategic signal. This pairing is designed to strengthen domestic AI infrastructure in China, essentially building a full-stack AI pipeline that does not rely on Western chips or cloud providers. Think of it as a sovereign AI play, model, hardware, and deployment all under one roof. And if the raw power of the model was not enough to get people's attention, DeepSeek is also cutting prices sharply. The combination of massive scale, open source availability, and aggressive pricing is clearly aimed at challenging the big proprietary AI players, your OpenAIs, your Anthropics, your Googles. For the FOSS community, this is a big deal. A 1.6 trillion parameter open source model means researchers, developers, and organizations around the world can potentially access state-of-the-art AI capabilities without being locked into a closed commercial platform. The Huawei hardware angle does raise some geopolitical eyebrows, of course, but from a pure open-source perspective, V4-Pro is a statement of intent that the open model ecosystem is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Next up, some very exciting funding news for the open-source AI creative community. Open Source for You is reporting that ComfyUI, the wildly popular community-driven AI image and video generation platform, has just raised $30 million in a new funding round, bringing its total funding to $48 million and putting its valuation at a remarkable $500 million. If you are not familiar with ComfyUI, here is the quick rundown. It is a node-based graphical interface that lets users build complex AI image generation pipelines using tools like Stable Diffusion. It has become the go-to platform for power users in the AI creative space precisely because it is open source, deeply customizable, and driven by an incredibly active community of contributors and plugin developers. Now, a $500 million valuation for an open source, community-driven project is genuinely significant. It signals that investors are starting to see real, substantial value in open ecosystems, not just as charity projects or goodwill exercises, but as serious, scalable infrastructure businesses. The funding is earmarked for expanding that open-source creative AI infrastructure, which should be good news for everyone who relies on the platform. This is part of a broader trend we are seeing, where open-source AI tooling is attracting serious venture capital attention. The old narrative that open source cannot compete with closed commercial products in terms of investment appeal is increasingly looking outdated. ComfyUI at $500 million is a pretty strong counterargument. All right, here is the story that is causing the most heated debate in open source circles this week, and honestly, it is a really thorny one. Open Source for You has covered a tool called Malus.sh, which describes itself as a way to, and I am paraphrasing here, liberate software from its existing copyright licenses through something called cleanroom cloning, powered by AI. So what does that actually mean? The claim is that Malus.sh can take an open source project and use AI to rewrite it from scratch in a cleanroom environment, meaning no direct copying of code, and in doing so, sidestep the original project's license obligations. No GPL compliance, no attribution requirements, no copyleft duties. Just a functionally equivalent piece of software with a clean legal slate. Now, if that sounds alarming to you as an open source advocate, you are not alone. This is raising serious questions on multiple fronts. First, is it even legally valid? Cleanroom implementations have a long history in software, but doing it via AI at scale is uncharted territory. Second, What does this mean for copyleft licenses like the GPL, which depend on the idea that derived works must carry the same freedoms forward? And third, what does it mean for open-source business models that rely on license enforcement as a commercial lever? This debate is still very much unresolved, and it could have genuinely far-reaching consequences for how open-source licensing works in an AI-assisted world. It is a conversation the whole community needs to be having, and we will be watching it closely. Now here is a story that I think every FOSS advocate will find genuinely exciting. According to Open Source for You, the Dutch government has soft-launched a platform called code.overheid.nl, which roughly translates to code.government.nl, a self-hosted, Forgejo-powered code forge designed to be the foundation of a sovereign alternative to GitHub and GitLab for Dutch government software. For context, Forgejo is a community-driven fork of Gitty, which is itself a lightweight, self-hostable Git service. It is fully open source, FOSS licensed, and specifically designed to avoid the vendor lock-in risks that come with centralized commercial platforms. So why is the Dutch government doing this? The motivations cited are digital sovereignty, supply chain integrity, and public control over code infrastructure. Basically, the Netherlands does not want critical government software sitting on servers controlled by foreign private companies. By self-hosting on a Forgejo instance, they keep their code, their infrastructure, and their data under domestic public control. This is part of a broader trend across European governments toward reducing dependency on US-based tech giants, and it is a concrete, real-world example of FOSS principles being applied at the national level. It is also a significant endorsement for the Forgejo project itself, which has been building momentum as a viable, community-governed alternative to GitHub. If other European governments follow the Netherlands' lead here, this could be a genuinely transformative moment for public sector open-source adoption. A fantastic development. Shifting gears now to a new open-source project launch that is particularly relevant for anyone working with AI in regulated environments. Open Source for You reports that a company called Toku has launched Makimoto, an open-source initiative for conversational AI, specifically targeting the Asia-Pacific region. At the core of Makimoto is something called Makimoto Kawa, an MIT-licensed orchestration framework built for production-grade transcription pipelines. It is designed around three key principles: data sovereignty, composability, and long-term transparency. Those are exactly the kinds of guarantees that organizations in regulated industries, think healthcare, finance, legal services, need before they can adopt AI in production. The MIT license choice is significant here. MIT is one of the most permissive open-source licenses available, meaning organizations can adopt, modify, and even build commercial products on top of Makimoto Kawa, without the copyleft obligations you would get from a GPL-style license. That is a deliberate choice to maximize adoption across both public and private sector organizations. The platform is set to become available from the 1st of July, so it is coming up soon. For APAC organizations that have been watching the AI wave with interest but hesitation due to compliance and sovereignty concerns, Makimoto looks like it could be a genuinely compelling option. Keep this one on your radar. Now for a story that has been frustrating a lot of people in the self-hosting and cloud-native communities. Its FOSS News is reporting on MinIO's continued drift away from open source, and the situation has been a bit of a roller coaster. MinIO, for those who are not familiar, is a high-performance object storage solution that has been a staple of many self-hosted and cloud-native setups. It became popular precisely because it was open source and compatible with Amazon S3's API. A lot of organizations built their storage infrastructure around it, but the road has gotten bumpy. According to its FOSS News, MinIO's repository has been going back and forth, archived, then unarchived, then archived again, which has caused significant confusion and concern in the community. But whatever the repo status says on any given day, the underlying direction of the project has remained consistent. MinIO is moving away from its open-source roots. So where does that leave the people who depend on it? Well, it is a good prompt to start exploring alternatives. There are several solid open-source S3 compatible object storage options worth looking at. Projects like SeaweedFS, Ceph, and Garage have all been getting more attention as people look for stable, community-governed alternatives. The MinIO saga is unfortunately not a unique story. We have seen this pattern before with other projects that started open source, and then pivoted toward more restrictive models. It is a reminder of the importance of choosing projects with strong community governance and clear open-source commitments. And that wraps up today's edition of Genai's FOSS News. What a week it has been! From trillion-parameter open models to government-backed sovereign code forges and a licensing controversy that could reshape how we think about open source in an AI world. There is genuinely a lot to be excited and a little bit worried about in equal measure. If you found today's show useful, please do hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and keeps this kind of FOSS-focused coverage coming. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is a great time. We cover open source news every week, and there is always something worth knowing about. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I especially want to hear what you think about the Malus.sh copyright controversy and the MinIO situation. Until next time, keep your software free and your source open. See you in the next one.